We are cruising right now, so 6,500 feet, and we have a pretty crazy headwind coming up. Oh, oops, right there. So what is that? 260 at 43 knots. So my true airspeed is 150, but my ground speed is 122, 123. So we're taking 26, 27 knots on the nose, which isn't great. We're going to KMPJ, Pettigene. There's about 477 miles to go. If we look at the other one, that means there's 3 hours and 52 minutes to go. So I have, you may have noticed in previous videos, I have two G3x Touch Screens. They're the 10-inch screens. The left screen is just a regular 10-inch screen, and the right screen has Sirius XM built in, which is phenomenal. Mostly for the music. I listen to music in flight, and it's a Sirius XM radio, and it definitely kills the monotony of a 4-hour flight in a straight line. I used to have XM weather as well, but for 30 or 40 bucks a month, it is absolutely not worth it. I use ADSB instead, which we have on both screens here. If I go to the weather page, there we go. So there's radar. The magenta or purple bands are where we don't have ADSB data right now. It's the cloud tops, winds aloft, etc., etc. It is incredibly helpful. And I think the other cool thing is I could just touch at an airport and look at the ATIS weather for that airport just by touching through it. And then I can look at the runways, and it'll tell me what the wind situation is on those runways and what my preferred runway is. Of course, you should always listen to the actual ATIS for real weather, but you get a pretty decent idea for planning on a long cross country. If I'm planning a stop somewhere and I want to see what the weather looks like, that's usually where I go to look. And of course you can see, well, the NOTAMs have been flaky, getting NOTAMs via ADSB, so make sure to check those before your flight, and of course you get all the airport information over here. This, I believe, is not AOPA, it's ACU Quick for directory info, because I have the Americas directory info, the Americas database in here. If it was just the US database, it would be AOPA. I can't say I've been able to tell the difference. Of course, we can see, all of the charts, airport diagrams, and, approach plates and all that kind of stuff on here, and you can zoom them in. And I'm not on the right page for this, but you can zoom it into the whole thing. Here, let me show you that. So then it's just a touch. But back to maps. So my usual setup on my screen here is on the PFD. The PFD and MFD is I have the EFIS setup on the left, engine information on the far left, and then split halfway down. I usually have the map over here. So I can switch to charts. Right now there's an IFR chart in there, which is not what I want right now. I would like to change that to VFR because I'm not flying IFR. And then it's just the regular VFR chart. And you can scroll around and, look at the airports. And just like on the other chart, I can see information about those airports just by touching on them. So there's a bunch of tabs on the bottom. You may have noticed I'm rotating the big knob here. So all the way to the left is the regular map projection. Then the chart is the next one. Waypoint information is the next one over, and that's, you've seen me pull that one up. I get information on the airport frequencies, and I can just touch the frequencies, and it asks me which radio to put it on. So if you look up here, the active rate is the COM1. So I'll touch COM1. And it puts it into the standby for COM1, which is pretty handy, less twiddling of knobs. Runway information, and the lights frequency right here. If there are multiple runways, there's a pull down, and I can select which runway. Petit, which is my destination, has no METAR. The closest METAR, I believe, is Russellville, and it's a little further out. NOTAMs, again, not picking up NOTAMs. This is a consistent issue I have with ADS-B. Sometimes I see some NOTAMs, most of the time I don't. Directory info. There's a GPS approach over there. Runway is almost 6,000 feet. It's pretty big. Petit used to be a private airport. I believe the Rockefellers owned it and owned all the land up there, and they donated it to the state. And now it's one of very few state parks with airports in them, and it's a big airport. One runway, but fairly big. So a bit of information on out there. This is interesting because it says there's avgas. I don't believe there actually is at that airport. But anyway, definitely not on the week. Maybe it's a during the week kind of thing. Yeah, hours. Yeah, 8 to 5. Call first. Okay, so you probably have to call out for gas. Same thing for everything. And then I can look at charts. There's no airport diagram for this airport because it's not a terribly big airport. But I believe there's 3. Oh, there's one approach. RNAV runway 3, which I can put in here. I usually don't. I usually have the charts on the other side, and I have the regular map presentation on here. Flight plan info. I'm just going direct Petit, which is easy enough. You can do. I can go to Little Rock after that, which I'm doing tomorrow. When I get up, I'm going to go to Little Rock. I'm going to top off there. I know the fuel there is a lot more expensive than all the airports around, but they have a crew car, and they're happy to lend me the crew car. And I'm going to take the crew car into town to pick up some pizza at a place that I used to grab pizza there way back when we lived there 15, 20 years ago. So I'm going to grab a pizza to eat for me, and I'm going to grab a pizza to take home for Mary. So let's remove that, because I don't need that in there today. There's a weather presentation here as well, so if I want to see weather right here, I don't need to look over there. This is sort of an interesting thing, right, because I have 2 screens, but the way the screens are far apart with the radio stack in the middle, it is actually not ideal for me to look at the right screen. You can definitely do it, but whenever I do it, I notice that I'm sort of cranking my neck and sort of moving my head over there. I think if I would do this again, I would maybe put 2 screens right next to each other and then put the radio stack over there. I don't know. We'll see. You know, I showed you on the other one as well. Temperatures aloft. You can pick the altitudes. You can see lightning. It's only showing us lightning information around here. You can see the magenta. No lightning. METARs. If I zoom in, yep, there's all the METARs. Everything is VFR. All of the different air mats, and I can click on them. AirMet Tango for turbulence, and get the information on the air mats. That's pretty cool. SIGMETs, TFRs. I see 1 TFR down there. PIREPs. There's a couple of PIREPs along our route of flight. Let's take a peek. UA, it's a regular PIREP. The time, flight level 320, doesn't matter. No, not for us. Okay, here's a flight level 045, a flock of birds southbound. It was a C402, which is a twin Cessna, I believe. Oh, okay. So he did 2 PIREPs on the birds. That's far enough away that I'm sure the flock of birds isn't going to be around anymore. Turbulence forecast. Nothing on the charts right now. Oh, no, here we go. It just took a second for it to show up. So it looks like we're in the yellow section and there's some green coming up. It is smooth as can be over here. There is no turbulence whatsoever. Icing forecast, waiting for data. I've had some issues with ADS-B over Wi-Fi. So this screen is connected via Wi-Fi, or Bluetooth rather, to the GDL39R in the back of the airplane. And it's had some random issues. I need to remember to work with Garmin to sort that out. They're pretty good at helping with that kind of thing. But if I look over here, And I pick, what were we looking at? Icing. Oh, it also says waiting for data. Interesting, so it's not a Wi-Fi issue. Let's take a look at info. Okay, so it looks like we just haven't picked up icing forecast data from ADSB in a while, or at all possibly. Sigmets as well, and CONUS radar. So we get two different radar feeds. We get continental and we get regional. The regional is a lot more detailed. So as long as I'm picking up regional, it's giving you everything around you. And if you've done your flight planning, you know that, if your destination is outside of the regional, you should be aware that you're not going to be flying into any heavy weather or anything like that. Turbulence forecast is almost an hour old. I don't know how often those get updated. It's possible that it's hourly because that doesn't really usually change very much. Okay, so that's it for weather. There's radar again. Yeah, so we're only seeing the regional. We're not seeing the national, which is everything, which is fine. Regional is like a gajillion miles around us, right? It's almost all the way there for me. So that looks like it's 250 miles would be my guess. So we're good there. There is a terrain presentation. There is no terrain in our way. Flat country. I can see traffic as well. There's nobody flying today. I don't know it's really gusty down low, and as you can see, the wind has now got better. It's now showing 270 at 51. And info data, satellite info, which satellites I'm seeing, and some of the data fields. There's no checklist on this SIM card. I believe this is my PFD2 SIM card. I need to move the checklist onto there. I have two sets of SIM cards, PFD1 and PFD2, and MFD1 and MFD2, and I swap them. So when I update databases, I always have either one or two in my bag, which it makes it easier for me to just update the database on that card, and I'll swap them out. And then I'll update it on the other one. So I always have two sets of databases. I've never had issues with the databases, so it's not a big deal to, you don't need to have two sets. It's just convenient. And then engine info. So there's 11 gallons left on the left tank. There's a 13 plus on the right tank. These wings have dihedral, so they are angled upwards. And the fuel, so they're angled upwards like this, right? The airplane's here, it's angled upwards like here. And the fuel float is on the inboard side, so it doesn't actually see all of the fuel in the tanks. It can see up to 13 gallons, and it's an 18-gallon tank. So I check, by sight to see that it's full, and it'll start descending. Once it actually hits 13 gallons, it will descend properly. If it's fuller than 13 gallons, it tops out at 13 gallons. So you can see the left side is actually showing actual indicated, and the right side is showing 13 plus. We're burning 7.5 gallons per hour at about 150 knots true airspeed. Of course, it's not our ground speed. Fuel pressure is 25.2. I'm running on the high pressure fuel pump, mechanical fuel pump on the engine. There is, of course, a boost pump as well, electric boost pump. There is a backup battery, and it's showing 13.7 volts internally on the backup battery. I measure internal voltage on the backup battery in addition to a few others. CHTs and EGTs. CHTs are in the 320s, 330s. EGTs are showing delta EGTs because I'm about 100 degrees lean of peak right now. The lean assist is on, which is showing me the delta and the lean of peak. And that's why I'm burning only 7.5, doing 150 knots. The miscellaneous temp 1 here is a temperature probe that I have attached to the mechanical fuel pump because I want to see the fuel temperature when it hits the fuel spider. This is because I've been having some fuel vaporization issues in the past, where if I'm on the ground and I'm at idle, the fuel gets really hot because there's not a lot of fuel flowing through there. So it was just a data point that I wanted to get. So there's tabs on the top, so I'm just scrolling through the tabs. I'm still in the engine, and now I went from main to electrical. All right, so we see two voltages. I see the main 14.4, which is the main battery, and 14.3, which is the power on the endurance bus. The endurance bus is split. You'll see there's a set of endurance bus breakers here, and it's split by a diode, so I can power just the endurance bus or the main battery. And I can talk about the electrical system a little bit later in more detail. I only have the main alternator running right now, and it's putting out 23 amps, so we're not really doing much. 24 amps. The second alternator, there's a permanent magnet SD8, BNC SD8 alternator. I leave it off unless I need it. The IBBS volt is, alright, sorry about that. I got transferred between controllers. So 14.1 volts on the IBBS. So I have a backup battery. IBBS, there's a company, I don't remember the company's name, they make this lithium-ion backup battery that I have connected to certain devices, including the main screen, and it's putting out 14.1 volts right now. The battery is showing -2 amps. I need to adjust the hysteresis on that current probe. The backup battery shouldn't actually be, is probably not actually putting out -2 amps. It's probably sitting nice and solid because I'm putting out 23 amps on the on the alternator. So we should be good there. The battery should be actually charging. It should be positive a little bit unless it's fully charged, which it might be. So then we can look at fuel. So 7.5 gallons per hour. The tick up here that you may see is what my fuel burn was at peak. So when I was leaning out, it finds peak for me, and then it tags the peak, so it knows how lean or how much less fuel from peak I'm using. So 11 gallons on the left and 13 on the right. So that indicates 24 gallons. The fuel totalizer is actually telling me that I have 28 gallons. So there's 4 more gallons in here, which is accurate. So there's probably 17 gallons in the right tank because the right tank is full. Again, fuel pressure 25.2. It's showing I have 3 hours and 47 minutes of endurance, which is about 571 miles. And I'm doing 19 miles per gallon right now, which is pretty horrendous, and that's because of that nasty headwind that I'm flying into. I usually see 28-ish. The fuel use is just a fuel counter, and I haven't reset it in a long time, so it just shows the max 999.9. The actual amount of fuel, I keep track of all of the fuel that I use in this airplane, and I just rolled over 2,000 gallons of fuel that went through it, so a good bit in the amount of time I've been flying. Okay, so up top I have COM1 active and standby. And I can just, if I want to change the frequency, I can just touch the active and it flip-flops active and standby. If I want to change the standby frequency, I just touch it and then I can, click it in. I go back there. I have transponder information. Again, just touch it and you can adjust the transponder code. Go back. There's an ident button. There's a timer. It's just a, start, stop, etc. My next waypoint is Pettigene. It's a 202 bearing, which is actually 220 because of the crosswind. 438 knots. I can edit my audio panel information over here. Options, blah, blah, blah. Same for COM2, and I can full screen the nav. I don't usually fly like this. I don't need all of that stuff, and I like having a map right in front of me. Okay, so on the right side, I have manifold pressure, percent power. I'm flying at 62% right now. 2450 RPM. Again, 7.5 gallons per hour. Oil pressure is 73 psi, which is right in the middle. Looks good. Oil temp is 159 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a bit low. I want to see that at about 180 so that it burns off any moisture that's in the oops, sorry for the shakes there, any moisture that's in the oil. It's started to get pretty cold out in Wisconsin, so I need to start closing off the oil cooler. I usually tape off the oil cooler in the winter because otherwise it just cools too much. Fuel quantity again, CHT, HET. I am currently on autopilot, so the autopilot strip up here is showing autopilot is active. I'm in GPS mode for heading or nav. I'm in GPS mode. Altitude hold 6,500, and my altitude bug is at 6,500. So left to right, so true airspeed, indicated airspeed. Oops, well, okay, let's do that. Indicated airspeed with the tapes up and down. You can see my VA label down here. VA is around 100-ish, and that label comes up and is pointing at the digits, so you know what your V speeds are just by glancing at the screen. 125 knots ground speed, which is pretty nasty. I'm getting 25 knot headwind right now. I'm probably going to add, I don't know, half an hour to my trip. 52 knots, 270.52 is the current wind information. Sorry, radio. On the left here is flaps, so I have 0 degrees of flaps in right now, of possible 30. I have my flaps set up to have two clicks, so it's either 0, 15, or 30. And then elevator trim just to the right of that, which is right around in the middle right now. Below that I have aileron trim. It's currently fairly far into the right. I need to increase the spring tension on that trim. It's sort of spring based with a little servo, so I need to increase that spring tension a little bit so it doesn't bottom out. But anyway, so here we have a tick for closest airport, which is 10.3 nautical miles, Kilo Sierra, Foxtrot Yankee, and there's a line. You see it's the one with one dash, and it's pointing that way. So I know the closest airport is that way. Timer is at 0. Outside air temperature is -4 Celsius. So I have pitot heat on, and the local time is 9:09 a.m. If I had a VOR tuned, this would point to the VOR, which helps with some VOR approaches. Flight plan is over here, and because I'm in the non-split mode, I have a little map over here and a flight plan over here. On the right side, we have 6,500 for the altitude bug, and then the current altitude is on this tape right here showing 6,500. On the right are my V speeds. I'm just oscillating a little bit with the wind, you know, but it's holding 6,500 pretty good. The current altimeter setting is 3001, and you see a message over here. It's this CAS message, Crew Enunciation System, I think is what it stands for. And it just says that alternator 2 is off, which is as expected. I fly with alternator 2 off, and that's just a white message, so it's nothing I should worry about. The more important messages show up as either yellow or red, and they may blink depending on how bad the scenario is. So over here we have a Garmin G5, which is a fairly common backup instrument, and a lot of people use them as primary instruments. It's a great little instrument. I have, when I'm practicing my instrument approaches and all that kind of stuff, sometimes I will fly entirely on this guy, and it's fantastic. It shows, it's interesting, you can see that it shows almost everything that's on here, right? You can see the autopilot stuff on the top, you can see the heading, you can see the flight director bars, altitude, airspeed, etc. I actually tune my altimeter setting, on this one because it cross-feeds. So it shows 3001 here, 3001 here, and if I change it, it changes on both. Is that pretty cool? Alright, so moving to the right a little bit, I have, sorry for the shaky cam, I have the Autopilot Head up here with the heading knobs and altitude select knobs. So these set the heading bugs, and then I tell the autopilot, depending on which settings I'm using, to use those knobs or go into GPS nav mode or whatnots. We'll go into more detail in using the GPS, possibly in a different video. my audio panel. It's the newer experimental GMA245. It's got built-in Bluetooth, and it communicates to the screens and all that kind of stuff. Awesome audio panel. I have music on and radio mute, so whenever the radios have audio, it mutes the music, which works great. So it's, as soon as you hear ATC say anything, the music mutes, you hear just them. Phone is paired, which is what I'm using. I'm using the screen here to get audio for the video. And I'm on COM 2. There's 2 knobs per side. The intercom knob here is for me to hear people on the intercom, and the outside bigger knob is the music volume. It also records all of the previous, I think it's 20 previous radio calls, so I can hit play and it'll play back to me the previous radio calls. There's a USB power plug right here. I don't think I've ever used it because I have USB power there. Okay, below that we have a GTN650, which is the current Garmin IFR navigator. There's a bunch of different models. I wanted one which had VORs for ILS, so the 650 or the 750 are the 2 options for that right now. So it does GPS, LPV RNAV approaches. It has a COM and it has a VOR. So I can remove that. Remove little. So direct pedigene. The flight plans crossfeed. So you can, when you edit one or the other, it moves them around. It's got the usual map, etc., etc. This is an IFR navigator. It's much easier to do everything over here, and it'll push to here, other than the instrument procedures, which you have to do here, and it'll push that way. So we have this to be IFR legal. And below is the GTR200. It's just a experimental COM-only unit. It's a pretty nice COM. I really like this COM. It tells me what the frequencies that I am talking on are. So this is an approach frequency, this is an approach frequency. If it was like an airport tower, it would say K, K blah 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 tower, or K blah 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 ground, or whatever, or center or whatnot. It's got 2 soft buttons, which I'm also a big fan of. There's the emergency soft button, which if I hit it, it tunes to 120.15 and waits at the primary frequency. And then I have a push to talk button, which I've never needed to use, but it's in case the push to talk buttons on the sticks for some reason stop working. So I can push talk and it works. Flip-flop to flip-flop. Monitor will monitor both frequencies, so I can listen to both. If the primary one talks, it mutes the secondary one, but it's an interesting way for you to just listen in on other frequencies and other things going on. All right, that's the avionics.
Thanks for watching. I should have more detailed videos of avionics and procedures later, and please subscribe. It definitely helps the channel. Have a good day.